Okay. Hello and good evening, everyone. Mike Durrell, managing the Mysterious Bookshop, and I am speaking to you from the Gardenia room of the Mysterious Bookshop here in downtown New York City. Tonight we're here with Mr. Dick Belsky and Lisa Daly, and we're going to talk about, or they're going to talk about, Beyond the Headlines, the new Claire Carlson mystery from Mr. Belsky, and which we have signed first editions of, available at Mysterious. You can see a link. Feel free to comment. We're going to have a lot of fun here tonight. And to Mr. Belsky and Ms. Daly, take it away.
Thank you so much. We are super excited. Every year, Dick, otherwise known as RG Belsky, has his big launch event at Mysterious Bookshop, right? This is kind of special for you, right?
I am not doing a Zoom from my home. I am actually at the Mysterious Bookstore, as if we were doing a real book party. The only difference is there's nobody here but me. So, but I'm here, and I'm actually at Mysterious Bookstore. So.
Right. Okay. But look at this. So you're not the only one. James McCrone is here. Let's leave those comments up for just a little longer. Philip is here from Palm Beach, Florida. Awesome to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, yeah, and Davin Goodwin. He's one of my fellow authors at Ocean View. There you go.
Yeah.
And I have not. Hello, Phil. How are you? And we can actually have a conversation. Phil was my boss for many years at both the Post and later at Star Magazine. So he knows pretty much all my journalistic secrets. So hopefully, those won't be revealed here. But anyway.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your journalistic secrets. Before we get started, I want to just do a little bit of an intro here. I am Lisa Daly. I'll be hosting tonight at the behest of the Mysterious Bookshop. We're super excited to be here, even though I am all the way in Florida. You are sitting there in the basement. RG Belsky, you have an illustrious career in the newspaper business.
I like illustrious. It's been called many things, but illustrious is among the better ones. Yeah, thank you. Okay,
it's good, right? But you were an editor at the New York Post, the New York Daily News, Star Magazine, NBC. I mean, really? Is there anybody?
The bottom line is, I had a lot of trouble holding on to a job. Obviously, So.
Yeah.
But I had four big things, and now I write fiction about the media. So it's been quite an interesting ride.
Right. Well, what I think is really cool is that Beyond the Headlines is the fourth book in the award-winning Claire Carlson mystery series, right? So yesterday's news was the first one. Below the Fold, the last scoop. And now, ta-da, we have
Beyond the Headlines. And I should say, when I wrote The Last Scoop, a lot of people who actually like Claire Carlson, my character, said, "Oh my God, I hope this isn't the last book." And I never thought of that when I wrote that title, but it isn't. And this is called Beyond the Headlines, and so we're just going to keep going. And Beyond the Headlines is. It's they talk about rip from the headlines, and I don't know that that's really the best way to describe it, but I certainly draw on a lot of my previous stories that I covered. And probably the biggest one with this is about a celebrity, a woman who's a celebrity, who's only a celebrity because she's a celebrity, like a kind of Kim Kardashian kind of character. And she's accused of murder. She's married to a wealthy man. She's accused of murdering him. And the best comparison I could do would be like the O.J. Simpson trial, where you have a huge celebrity trial. And, as Phil Button, who I mentioned earlier, is quite aware, we were involved in that for at least probably a couple of years at Star Magazine. It was probably the biggest celebrity crime story ever. So I really wanted to write a fictional version of it, which is a lot different because it's a woman and there's other factors involved. But I really enjoy using some of the experience I've had in real life journalism. And the other good thing about that is I don't have to do so much research because, I actually did know some of this stuff.
You
so I don't
lived
have to work as hard. Yeah, I can just write a lot of it. So
Well, I think it's funny that you mentioned Phil Bunton because can we pop that comment up? You said you worked with him with Star, right?
I actually began working with him at the New York Post, but then he was the editor, executive editor. I don't even know what your title was, Phil, but he was my boss at Star Magazine, and there he is. Send me a check. Yeah. Jerome, I would like to say that the guy who just said I must be old used to hang out with people like Janis Joplin and he's a media guy, photo media guy person, and he was at NBC and he took pictures of Elvis and Janis Joplin. So he's not that much younger than me. But.
Well, I don't know how to say this name. Zaina O'Neill says you are a legend.
Zana O'Neill, Zana O'Neill, and she's a very perceptive, brilliant woman because she's one of the few people who actually believes I am a legend in the journalistic field. But thanks for saying it. Jim Nesbitt is a friend and a fellow author down in Alabama, and we go back a long ways now for a few years, and he writes some great books. He won an award for his book too, so I thought I'll throw in a plug for him. Phil, stop hugging. Go, Phil. We've discussed you, Phil. For God's sakes, man.
All right. So I love this. Okay, before we get really into the down and dirty of the book, because I really love this one. I think it's the best in the Claire Carlson series.
Thank you. Yeah.
I always think that, right? Last year I was like, oh, this is the best one, and now I'm like, okay.
Well, I actually, people ask me that question, and I generally do say the most recent one, but I actually really enjoyed writing this book, and we can talk about it a little, because the other element of this book that comes into it is Vietnam. And, and yes, I am old enough that I was in Vietnam in the war. And so I bring some of that element into it too. So yeah, in many ways, this is my favorite of the four, although I like them all.
Well, okay. So since you mentioned Vietnam, let's talk a little bit about that and how it influenced the book.
Right.
Right. I mean, I know you were there, but let's dig into that a little bit.
Well, basically, I like books where it's present day crime, but the elements of the crime may have taken place many, many years earlier. And I just came up with this idea that the guy that's murdered as a very young man had been in Vietnam. And the celebrity woman is from Vietnam. So the obvious thing is, wait a minute, did he have her as a baby or something? There's some connection in Vietnam, and it's not that simple, because that would be kind of a giveaway. It's much more complicated than that. But I like the idea that the celebrity came from Vietnam. She married a guy who had been in Vietnam 50 years earlier. There's no known connection, but Claire is like intrigued by this, and she keeps digging into the past. And the backstory on this, and I don't think we've ever even talked about this, Lisa, is that when I got back from Vietnam, I wanted to write a Vietnam novel. I wanted to write like a version of MASH, for Vietnam. And I started, and I went to people in the publishing industry and agents at the time, and they were like, nobody cares about Vietnam. Don't write about that. And then things like Platoon and Full Metal Jacket came up, but the moment had passed, so I never did. And I probably never will write a Vietnam novel. But I have all this stuff that I had thought about from Vietnam. And so this was an element. And, don't get me wrong, this book is not about Vietnam, but there are elements in there. And I use some of my own stuff. I mean, like the character was in an intelligence unit as a young man in Vietnam, and I was in an intelligence unit. And again, this is the lack of that I don't want to do research. It's a lot easier to write stuff I know. It's like, well, I'll just make him the same as me. And the other thing is, he's like a guy. When people find out in Vietnam, they always say things, and it's nice. I really appreciate it. And they go like, thank you for your service. That's great that you did that and all that. And, the bottom line is there was nothing noble about it. I mean, it was called a draft. And I always say the government made me an offer I couldn't refuse, which was, you can go to war, you can go to jail, So I went to Vietnam War. I didn't want to go, but once I got there, I think as a writer, stuff like that really helps you, because you gain experiences that come out in this book. And so 50 years ago when I was there, who knew that Beyond the Headlines would be out? And I just wanted to get the hell out of there. But now looking back, I go, oh yeah, I can use some of that stuff.
Yeah, well, it was like Nora Ephron that said everything is copy, right? So Joanna Elm is here. I just
Joanna
saw her
Elm.
pop in.
So
Finally
Joanna
made it.
Elm, I would like to say that Joanna Elm is a career not somewhat similar to mine. She was I was the news editor of Star Magazine, and one of my predecessors as news editor of Star Magazine was Joanna Elm, and we never worked together, but we sort of know each other that. And then she's gone on to write mysteries herself. And she actually has a mystery blog that I know she wrote up my last book. So yeah, we've traveled. Joanna and I have traveled in the same circles, even though we never actually worked together, Joanna. But it sort of feels like we did, doesn't it? Because we moved in with the same people.
I've had that experience happen myself where I end up friends with either the person that I came after or the person that came after me, and it's funny. I think you have so many shared experiences, you automatically sort of feel like friends.
I don't think I'm giving anything away here, Joanna. But Joanna has been writing me saying, we should have another party. Well, I'm going to have it virtual. She says, well, I'm not sure. I'm not. I hope I can get on. You made it. You're here,
Yay!
Joanna. There you go.
Good. Well, I also adore Claire Carlson. Of course, right? She says, Dick, you're a great author. I adore Claire Carlson.
Right.
Love Claire Carlson. Love Claire Carlson. So let's talk about some of the influences for your character. Is she based on a real life person? Several real life people? Spill it.
That is probably the question people ask most. And they say like, and this has happened with my previous characters. And because she's a woman, there's a number of women who will say, oh, is that based on me? And sometimes just to hell us, oh, yeah. No, the truth is it's a combination. I've not only worked with a lot of very colorful, interesting journalists, but I've worked with a lot of colorful, interesting women journalists over the years. And the kind that are not only they're great reporters, but they're also like great fun and energy in the newsroom. And I tried to capture, and there's a handful, and I'm not going to name names because some of them may be here. There's a handful of these women that probably more than others that I thought about when I was doing it. But it's more that idea that you're drawing on that this kind of high energy person in the intense New York City media, and also being a woman facing challenges that and we get into that with Claire, that you face challenges that you don't as a man. Now I go back to the day when I started in journalism. The role of women was completely different. I mean, most women in newspapers were writing on the feature pages or the Society or things like that, except at the New York Post. The New York Post was one of the originally, this was like in the early 70s, owned by Dolly Schiff. They had some great women reporters. I mean, Nora Ephron had started out there. There was Helen Duder, did a lot of court stuff. We had a lot of really good, Anna Quinlan, who went on to be a big author. She was a reporter there. And so that was the start of it. And then over the years, I've met and worked with a lot of others. So yeah, I try and draw on a lot of that. And the other thing though, that I see so much in New York media, both men and women, and in so many lives, and including to some degree, I guess, my own, is the compromises people have to make. Because, working in the New York City media, certainly when I did with the intense tabloid wars of the 80s and everything, it's not like a 9-to-5 job. I mean, you every day you live and die with it. Every day the other side beats you on a story, and it's you throw yourself into it. And as a result, other aspects of your life suffer. Mm-hmm. And I know it's a nice idea that you can have everything, that you can be a great newspaper editor, a great reporter, and you can have a great marriage, and you can have a great family, and you can be all these things. And there are a few like that, but there are many more that I've met that something suffers. So most of the time it's their personal life. They throw themselves so much into their job that, and that's Claire. And people say how do I describe Claire? Well, Claire is maybe one of the best journalists, certainly in the way I've written her, that you'll ever meet. She's smart. She's funny. She's got integrity. She's tough. All these things. Her personal life is the complete opposite. It's kind of like I say it's like a train wreck. Her personal life, she makes bad decisions about things, men. She's been married 3 times. Again, I think that that just rings true to a lot of people. And it also, to be honest, it makes an interesting character because, I've talked about this a lot on some of these things, which is that the toughest part about writing a character is not making the character too perfect. Because if you make a really perfect, if I made her, oh, she's a great mom and she's great, it's like, okay, it's kind of boring,
Right.
And in fiction, you want somebody with flaws. You want there's always the problems they have to have, and I think the flaws are what makes a character interesting. Certainly, the characters that I love to read about, and so when I started writing characters, I tried to write the same kind of characters.
I think that's true for just people, that not just characters, right? That we like our friend better, who we can go over their house at 4:00 in the afternoon, and their kitchen is piled up with whatever newspapers and all that other stuff, and right, you don't want to go into the person whose house looks like a Pottery Barn spread every day, right?
Well,
you can't relate to that.
Well, I didn't actually realize I had done this, but I was talking about this in another interview, and it is interesting. Claire's best friend is a friend named Janet, and I use her a lot for Claire to bounce stuff off of. And Janet is the exact opposite of Claire. Janet is like happily married. She's got 2 daughters. She's a successful lawyer. She's very organized in her life, and it drives Claire crazy. Like there'll be scenes like where she'll be cutting her pizza with a fork and knife very neatly, and Claire will be pizza all over her kind of thing, and Janet will get annoyed at Claire for screwing up her life. But that's probably why they're best friends, because, just like with romance, but with friends too, sometimes the opposites attract. And so I've had a lot of fun doing that. And if you have somebody who's as kind of a much of as personal disaster as Claire, you want to, the friend keeps her level. The friend kind of keeps her like, come on, Claire, that's not really what you want to do. Or do you want to, do this? So, but I'd like to say all this is well planned out, but a lot of it just becomes what it just seems natural. I try and write just people that I try and make it like. I say real because they're not really real, but as much to real life as I can, rather than I don't sit down and I know people that do like lists of characters and they'll, well, she has this and that, she has brown hair and she has this, she likes bicycling and kite flying or whatever, like I've never done that. I just write somebody that I think I would like. And then go from there. I did a previous character called Gil Malloy, who was a mail reporter who had a lot of the same issues as Claire. And a lot of people always say, well, why don't you have Claire and Gil Malloy meet in a book sometime? I was like, they'd kill each other,
Joanna has a great question here. As an author question, you have a great character with a lot of flaws, as you say. I've just gone through the ringer and was told to make my investigative reporter more sympathetic. What advice would you give to her?
Well, I would give the advice to the editor or agent who told her that, because I know what you're saying. You want to, on one level, you can have the person be a disaster, but you want to sort of like them on some level. But I would point out the book called Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, which, sold a few copies, and certainly was a phenomenon. And I thought it was great. I loved it. The whole world loved it. If you haven't read that book, I can tell you right now, and I don't think there's really any spoilers, there is not one sympathetic character in that book.
You have to really be a great writer to pull that off.
The writer also lies to you. She doesn't play fair with you all the way, and there's no happy ending to that book. So that writer, basically, Gillian Flynn, who is a former journalist, by the way, used to work with Entertainment Weekly, broke every rule that you're told by all these people, and turned out a phenomenal book. So all I'm saying is, and this is something that I believe, you need to write the kind of book that you want to write. You shouldn't write a book that somebody else does. Now, like I have editors and I have an agent whose opinion I value, and so I do listen to what they say. But in the end, I'm not writing a book that somebody else wants to write. I'm writing a book. The reason I'm writing novels is so I can write the kind of novels that I want to write. And I just think the best novels are ones where the author doesn't listen to 82 people. One of my pet peeves, which will probably annoy a lot of people, some people who are authors here, is whenever I go there and say, I showed my book to my beta group, 12 people, and they made these things, and I made these suggestions. Like a beta, I show my book to like maybe 2-3 people because a beta group. Why would I listen to these 15 people tell me that my character isn't sympathetic, Joanna, or whatever it is? When do they know more than I know? I just think I just really believe that that I try and write what I want to write. I do listen if somebody tells me something, and obviously if 8 different people tell you something, then you listen to them maybe a little bit more. But don't you can you're in the business too, obviously, Lisa. And I've gotten letters where you can go like, oh, the character needs to be bigger. No, the character's too strong. You got to take it down. Well, the story's good, but the character doesn't work. Good character, but the story, and it can all be like within another day you can get responses like that. Yeah. So basically, I wouldn't take it. I mean, if it's a requirement to get the book published, Joanna, maybe you listen. But I worry too much when you become too consumed with putting something in a formula or format like that.
Yeah. All right. So Carl, I'm gonna mangle this name. Karl Heinz Zaniason, is that it? Says, greetings from Germany. What the F are we talking about? Welcome, Carl. So I have no
idea who that is, and he clearly has no idea who I am. So there you go.
I'm going to fill him in really fast before we go. I do apologize for the feedback. I think it's because Dick does not have any headphones on, and so you're getting a little echo out of his computer speakers. So we apologize for that for anybody who that is like sensory overloading right now. Carl, hi, welcome. So this is R.G. Belsky. He is the author of a fine new book called Beyond the Headlines. And you just signed a whole stack of those books, didn't you?
I did, right?
I think we have a picture of that somewhere.
Do we have a picture by the Wizards of today? No, that's not it. That's not it. There it is. No, it's a picture of it. Okay, that's the book. But I signed. There you go. There's one of them. Yeah, I signed a bunch of them here. Yeah.
And you can not only buy it from.
Well, I'm getting a lot of echo. You need to turn that off.
You need to. Hey, there you go, buddy.
Yeah. Like.
No, you just select your camera. You need to mute. Woo.
I know, it's weird.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, we're back. Yeah. So everybody. Please patronize the Mysterious Bookshop because they've been so great to me. I've done a lot of you've been here for these events. We did several of them here, which were great. Last year we did this virtual, and they're open. They're selling books, and you don't have to be in New York. You can order them. You can order any of the books, but you can also order one that's signed by me.
Right.
It could be very valuable at some point very soon. I would think. Yeah.
Like if you die. Or if which is bound to happen eventually, or if you become famous super famous, because there's that new Son of Sam thing happening on Netflix.
Netflix, yeah. So I became a mini TV star yesterday. And by the way, I'd rather become famous than dead, if it matters. If my opinion matters, there, Lisa. Because those were the two options. Yeah, as a lot of people here know. My TV career kind of skyrocketed 2 days ago. No, I've got a relatively small part, but there's a new documentary on Netflix called Sons of Sam, Descent into Darkness. And basically, it's a whole premise that Son of Sam didn't act alone, that there were other Sons of Sam. Now, I have no particular opinion on that. I never pursued that angle or anything. But part of it, especially the first episode or two, is about what happened at summer of 1977 here in New York City. And because I was a city editor of the New York Post then, they asked me to talk about it. And so I'm what do they call it? A talking head on there. And I got to tell you, it's amazing. I've gotten calls and texts from people that I haven't heard from in years saying, "Hey, I saw you on Netflix," and
there you were.
And so there, and again, and I'm not on here that much. I think I have about like a half dozen moments of interviews. And but I will say this: everything I say is quite brilliant. So.
All right, that's good. Well, I think it's great. So can we pop that comment from Jim Nesbitt back? Oh, hey, Linda. Very nice to
Linda
see
Rollins,
you.
how are you?
Awesome. So Jim Nesbitt gave us a great comment. Dick's right. Don't listen to these people. He was obviously commenting, adding on to Dick's advice for Joanna. So and Jim is a fantastic author in his own right. So yes, listen to these.
Jim won the Silver Falchion Award at Killer Nashville last year for his most recent mystery. And Jim and I have had these conversations a lot because we talk a lot both in person and on the phone. And we're sort of on the same wavelength when it comes to writing, which is, you got to write what you want to write. And it's really interesting because Jim's books are very good and but they're also very different from mine. And I really read his books. I'm kind of like, oh, wow, I can't do that. And the other thing Jim does, and I can't tell you off the top of my head, Jim's got, I think, about four books out. Every one of them have the greatest titles. He comes up with the greatest. The books are good too, but the titles are really, really great. So
that's a special skill. I mean, you know this from being in the newspaper business for a million years. Titling is an art form in itself.
Right.
Definitely.
You can sell a lot of stories in the New York Post that weren't that good just by the headline.
With a really good headline.
Starting, headless body and topless bar, of course, being the most famous. But there you go.
That's your claim to fame, right there. I
always say about that. I did not write that headline, but if you Google me, all the things I did in journalism and all the years I was there, that's probably gets the most mention. Oh, he was involved in headless body and topless bar, and. I didn't write it. The great Vincent Musetto, headline writer at the Post, wrote it. Although there's debate about that, but I accept the Vincent Musetto version. And it becomes a legend. And now that is a story that probably would have been 2 paragraphs of the paper except for that headline. So.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, who could read? I remember that headline from. I mean, I was young. No, kidding. All right, so Michael Clancy is here from Costa Rica today. Thank you so much for being here. We're really glad. Jim is thanking you for the plug.
I can't even begin to say. All I know is that every time I have a book event, Michael Clancy, who's a really, really good friend, leaves the country. I mean, I think last year, Mike, you were in Italy. I mean, he doesn't just not show up. He leaves the country. But he has checked in here, which is nice.
That's very nice. That's very nice. So you talked a little bit about some of the scandals and really sort of crazy stories that you've covered.
Right.
And I want to talk about some of the bigger influences in the book, and in particular how O.J. Simpson played into that. Let's chat about that.
Yeah, and. I should say full disclosure here about O.J. Simpson that I actually wrote a book about O.J. Simpson in 1977. And I think the title was something like O.J. Simpson, America's Hero, or something like that. And it basically said that not only was O.J. Simpson the greatest athlete playing, but that he was one of the greatest human beings on the face of the earth. So, now things were different. This was when O.J. was, running through Hertz doing
the airport,
everybody loved him, yeah. And so I kind of missed it on that one, but then a lot of people did, And but yeah, so one of the comparisons in this book to the O.J. case is I wanted to take a celebrity case where the verdict is impacted a lot, not just by the evidence, but by public sentiment. And certainly in the O.J. case. Now, there was a whole factor in the O.J. case behind the evidence, which was obviously race. So race played a big part. And even though, the evidence seemed to overwhelmingly show that he was guilty, he was acquitted. And a lot of that was because the racial issue came in. So the same kind of thing happens in Beyond the Headlines with my character, Lori Bateman, who's the beautiful celebrity Vietnamese actress accused of murder. And in this case, it comes something very current beside race, which is also obviously is the women's movement and Me Too. And she basically makes an emotional appeal, both in an interview with Claire and then later in court, about how horrific this man had been to her and about abuse and things like that. And it's an interesting defense because it's a kind of, the defense is basically like, I didn't kill him, but even if I did, it was justified because of these terrible things I did. And she wins everybody's sympathy, including Claire's, and all these people like, oh my God, and it swings the case beyond just the evidence. Now, I'm not giving it away because this all happens in the beginning of the book. But Claire is one of those people who, even though she can be determined one answer is right, she then starts looking at the evidence. And as she begins looking at the evidence, then she's not sure. So she then lets the thing is, well, I don't know. Is she this innocent woman who just, did what she had to do? Or is she is she using Me Too and things, for her own justification? What's true? What isn't? Is she guilty? Is she innocent? And that becomes the rest of the book, where Claire has to try and put aside all the side issues and just deal with the evidence. And I think because Claire is a woman, she looks at it in a different way too, because she certainly is very sympathetic with this woman in the beginning until she begins to wonder if she's being lied to. So that's really the comparison in many ways, I think, to the OJ case. And it's just the idea of a case where it's not just a good crime trial. I mean, the two things we care most about, probably that people read the media for or watch media these days, is crime and celebrities. So when you put the two together, there certainly have been celebrity crime stories like Bill Cosby, Robert Blake, but nothing with the impact of something like OJ, where you get sex involved. And this is the same in this thing too. And it's so that's why this was very interesting for me to write. You have to read the book to find out the ending, but it's not a simple ending either. It's a little, as somebody said, you think you know the ending, and then there's another twist at the end. So there you go.
It's worth it to get all the way to the end. It's definitely worth it. So let's just go through, because one of the things we've done is sort of launch into talking about the book without really sort of giving, that 30-second elevator speech about what it's actually about. So I know we give a little teaser at the beginning. Can you give us just a little more of the storyline?
Lori Bateman is like I said, a celebrity who's sort of a celebrity like a Kim Kardashian because she's a celebrity. She's married to a very wealthy billionaire who's 30 years older, which brings on a lot of jokes about their age. And he's found murdered and she's found standing over the body, and she's arrested for murder. And the question then becomes, did she do it or not? And the problem is that, not the problem, the issue is that when Claire starts digging into it, it's much more complicated than that. And that's where you get into the Vietnam stuff too. That is, as she starts digging into the dead man's past, she finds all these other secrets that may or may not have played a role in his murder 50 years later. So there's a lot of layers to this. And I always say, when I say that, I say, well, there's a celebrity crime trial that's happening now, but there's Vietnam 50 years earlier. It probably sounds like, well, what does one have to do with the other? It does kind of mesh together, I believe. I think when you read it, it makes sense. But you have to find out the secrets from 50 years ago to find out the secrets of today, and that's what Claire does in the book.
I love that. So Joanna says, I've read half of it. I'm in awe with the way you write so seemingly effortlessly, but you actually make some really good points about the issues of the day. So speaking of the issue of the day, thank you, Joanna. That's a really good comment. Speaking of the issue of the day,
I just want to say it takes a lot of effort to look like you're writing effortlessly.
It's true, right? It's true.
It's not effortlessly, So one of the best reviews I ever got from somebody, and I loved it, was it said, Belsky wrote this book. It seemed like he sat down with the first page and then never got up until he was finished, that it just flowed. And, obviously that's not true, but that if people read a book like that, then I think that's a great compliment.
Right. Well, sure. Because if it feels like that, like the writer wrote it that way, it's certainly going to feel that way when you're reading it.
Right.
Right. Unless, Yeah, exactly. Joanna, though, is obviously she's a writer herself, so she knows that you didn't just sit down and let it all flow out. So here's my question about this. When she mentioned the issues of the day, you were writing this book when a lot of the Me Too stuff was really heating up.
Mm-hmm.
You have a female character. You're a man. So
yeah.
Ooh.
I just
Wait, hold on.
before we get into that, I'm looking at some of the comments, and I just wanted to give a call out to Gregory Gitchett, who wrote Great Twists and Turns. So Greg he does a number of things. We work together, both the Daily News and then at NBC, and he's a really good friend. And he's the first person that always reads my book. So apart from like an agent or editor. So I always give him the book. I give him the arc. And I say, read this. Tell me, is there anything wrong? And like in this book, for instance, we have several chapters where Claire goes to Hollywood, and because she's in LA, and I've been in and out of LA, but Greg lived in and worked at the LA Daily News, so he was able, stuff like that is good, and he's also the guy that helps me organize these events. So if I don't call him out, I'm going to not hear the end of it. So look, there's always issues. I'm a male writing a female character. People say, why do you do that? I don't know. I've written male characters too. I find writing female characters more interesting. I just think because, like I said, I think their challenges sometimes are different or better. The very first book I ever wrote many years ago, I had a male reporter, and I wrote this book, and it was like, I showed it to a woman, and she was like, it's okay. And then she said, what if you made the reporter a woman? And I did, and the book just came alive, at that point. So I just think,
or did R.G. Belsky turn into a robot just there? I'm not sure. I said, I think you might have turned into a robot. It could have just been on my end, but it looks like so. Say that again. So say that again, what you just said, just in case.
What I said, I can see myself. I don't know if you can. I said that the very first book I ever wrote had a male character, and he was kind of a traditional male reporter, with a hat and all that. And a woman in the publishing business had read it, a friend of mine, and she's, and I never published it. I said, is this any good? And she said, it's okay, it's good, it's decent, And then she said, what if you made the reporter a woman? And I did. And then the book just sort of came alive when I did that. And I've done that and I'll get to your question in a minute. And that's the interesting thing as a writer. And it's happened to me on one or two occasions where something has come alive. I did a previous character, and I had called him like Joe something. And this is the Gil Malloy series. And I don't know, Joe Malloy, I just didn't like him that much. And my dad had been named Gil. And in fact, the G in Belsky is for Gil. And so I said, let me name him Gil. And the minute I did that, it just like the character kind of worked. So I just think that's why I like writing, the women characters sometimes, because they just kind of work better. Now, there are issues and areas that you need to to talk to women. And fortunately, and the one obvious thing people always say, well, how do you, I would always, ask somebody like, okay, like, dress them how they look and things like that, but there are also bigger issues. And I remember like I have a woman, my agent's a woman, most of my editors I deal with are women, and so you do discuss things. And so when you're writing about the Me Too movement, one of the things we discussed in this case was that because there's the idea like, well, do you believe a woman on the face of it, or does she have to have some kind of proof? And the issue, the question was, if somebody like Lori Bateman was using Me Too for her own personal gain and lying about it, that was an affront to other women, because she was taking something that was really important and very valuable and had accomplished so many things, and was turning into something it shouldn't be. So anyway, I talked a lot about that with women, obviously before the book. And I think, and again, I think because Claire is a woman, there's also an incident in the book where where Claire wants to have Claire has relationships with people and a couple of times with people in her own company. And like Janet tells her, like, you got to be careful because, it's the same thing. Even though you're a woman and he's a man, if he's working for you and he doesn't get his contract renewed, he can say, well, that's because I wouldn't sleep with her. So you have to be careful too. So, these are things that Claire has to navigate, just like we all have to navigate. I try not to make the books particularly heavy duty or political or anything like that. But you can't write about stuff that's going on in present day and ignore all that. I mean, you could, but I don't think it would be very interesting. So yeah, I touch in, you touch on social media and the effect of Twitter and all that stuff. But it's I hope I answered the question, but it's
you forgot by now. I want to pull that Jim Nesbitt quote back up again. He says, Belsky writes fast copy and will snap your neck with the plot twist repeatedly. That should be on the front cover. That is like
I appreciate it, but it would have been nice if you spelled my name right, wouldn't it?
Details.
I know. I asked for too much from Nesbitt. Yeah,
right?
Yeah. There you go. No, it's good. No, he's.
So what is I know you have a lot of friends who are female reporters. Mm-hmm. What is the thing that they tell you they like the most about Claire and dislike the most about Claire?
Well, I think there are people that dislike the fact that I certainly are people that dislike the fact she sleeps around. I mean, I've gotten a bit of that. And again, like if she were happily married or had a boyfriend or something, I don't know how that would be that interesting. And I think it's a little bit of a double standard because like men detectives and men characters, over years I've slept around, but I've gotten. I had a review on a blog just the other day for this where somebody said I love the character, but I could do without the fact she sleeps around so much and things like that. So there's some of that. I've had people say a lot of the negative stuff I take as compliments. I've had somebody say to me, I really like her, but there are times I just want to like shut her up and strangle her because she's just saying so stupid things. And I take that as a compliment because to me, the character is a little bit like, it's like she has no filter on her mouth, and it's a little bit like, I don't know if you saw the Fran Lebowitz documentary recently, or you watched Larry David. I love people like that. Just say, and they say the kinds of things, they say the kind of things that like you want to say. So I interviewed Ace Atkins recently, who writes the Spencer series that started by Robert B. Parker, and he said that Robert B. Parker always used to say about Spencer that Spencer says the kind of things that you always think you should have said after you left the person. You think, oh, I should have said that. Spencer says it at the time, and I try and do a lot of that. I try and do a lot of that with Claire, but I think I think the flaws of Claire hopefully is what makes her popular among believe me, I'd like an awful lot of women who like it, and a lot of men who like it too. I just wanted to give a call out to some of these people. Charles Salzberg is here, another really terrific author.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you. We're so glad we're here.
Yeah, I've been, and I did a panel with him a while back, where he moderated and we talked about a lot of stuff. And another journalist, there are a lot of journalists out there who, they're good if they're journalists, So.
They are. All right. Okay.
I got to do one more here. Rich Sorotnik, Rich actually won the Seamus Award for one of his books. He writes about a newspaper reporter too, and he writes about a newspaper reporter back in the 70s, which is kind of like my Netflix thing on Son of Sam. So Rich gave me actually the book what he does, where it talks about like part of it is about Son of Sam, not all of it, but a part of it. And he's like, well, you lived that, did I get anything wrong? And I was like, no, you nailed it. He's like, oh, good. And he's another terrific writer. I know I'm leaving people out, but I see people, I see people here. And Pat Rizzo, my old pal from NBC. It says, have you ever wanted to write other genres? Yeah, but I don't know. I'm pretty busy doing this stuff.
I was going to get to that. What I wanted to say, Rich made a really great comment about that Claire is almost as good a character as you are. And that's what I was thinking about when you're like, oh, she talks a lot. She doesn't have a filter.
Yeah.
I'm like,
That's like Belsky. Yeah.
Who does that remind us of?
Yeah,
So,
but she's a little bit more adorable than me, I think, and.
Can that be true? Joanne Wasserman is here. Look at this. Very nice. Very
hey, Belsky.
nice.
There you go. That's it. That's all you can say is, hey, Belsky, Joanne. Joanne is one of those people that might have a bit of herself in Claire. So, because she's, just so we all know.
We have a real life Claire.
Longtime reporter at the New York Post and New York Daily News.
Awesome. Okay, this is a good question from James. Have you ever thought about having Claire and Gil Malloy compete against each other for the same story?
Some people know Gil Malloy was the character I did in a previous series for 4 books. And I think the answer to that is similar to what I said about them having a romance. What I said, if they had a romance, I mean, they could fall in love, but they'd probably kill each other, and I don't know what would happen. I don't like that in books. Michael Connelly, who's probably the greatest mystery writer around right now, but he does that, and I don't like when he does that. Like, he'll have one character meet another character in his books, and he'll combine characters. To me, it ruins the whole suspension of disbelief or whatever it is. I like to think that Claire and Gil Malloy sort of operate in separate universes. Yeah. And so no, I don't. I've never really thought about that. I've never thought about them competing for the same story. I've never thought about them having a romance. If I run out of ideas at some point, I might, but right now I've got to
try and drum up a little interest in the old stories.
This is a great question, right? This is a good question. This is a really good question from some of my favorite people from NBC. So both Daniel Larkin and Daniel Friedman, and Sam is their son, who I didn't know at NBC because he's very young. But they were great people at NBC News and great friends. And who's my all-time favorite author besides R.G. Belsky? Well, I would say that's an easy one. When you come to mystery, it would have to be Raymond Chandler, which isn't particularly surprising because I think pretty much everybody, including myself, got started doing this by reading a Raymond Chandler and saying, could I write that? And the answer is you can't, because nobody could ever write like Raymond Chandler. That's what started it. But the other answer I would give, and this surprises people sometimes, is Stephen King. Because people haven't read Stephen King. They think of Stephen King as a horror writer, and he certainly writes a lot of horror. He writes a lot. So back in the 70s, when I first started trying to write, I picked up, I think it was Salem's Lot or one of those. And then I started reading all the Stephen Kings, Dead Zone, Firestarter. A lot of them aren't just horror. They're more like political thrillers and all sorts of stuff. And I read, and I haven't read all of Stephen King's. It's impossible because he's so damn prolific. But most recently, I read a couple of years ago, I read 11/22/63, which is all about the Kennedy assassination. If you really want to get freaked out, and you haven't read Stephen King, read The Last Stand, because it's kind of like what we're going through. It's about a pandemic that destroys the world, It's 800 pages. Books, some of them are 800 pages, but they're page turners. And as a writer, for all the people out there, like some of you I know are writers, other people out there on the list have told me they want to try and write books. The one book I would say more than any to read is On Writing by Stephen King.
Oh yeah,
and it's a classic, and he just talks about and the two messages he makes, which are the things that I learned or I thought I picked up and have tried to follow, is number one, he said there's two things you have to do to be a writer. Number one, you have to write. He's like, every day you just have to write. And number two is you have to read. And you can't say, I don't have time to read, because you can't be a writer unless you read. And he said, if you don't have time to do both of those things every day of your life, then you shouldn't be a writer. And, it's simple advice, but I agree with it.
I agree too. And in fact, if you're looking for something great to read, you can get a signed copy of Dick Belsky's new book, Beyond the Headlines.
There you go.
See,
Yeah,
he signed a whole bunch of copies
Yeah.
today.
There you
That's
go. That's
nice.
me. That's me signing them here yesterday. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I'm
That's
sure
awesome.
that if they all get sold and more people want signed copies, they'll let me sign others.
You will surely sign more. And you guys, if you are looking for the link for that to get directly to the book, it's actually right in the description below. So I wanted to go back to a couple of the comments.
Yeah, can I just call out one or two people because
Yeah,
Marsha Casper Cook, who's also an author, but has had me on her show a number of times. She has a blog show out of Chicago, I believe, but it's a blog that you can hear it anywhere. And she's been just on her show with Vincent Sandry, another author, I think last week. And sometimes we talk about our books, but this one we just talked about movies. Sometimes we just talk about all sorts of stuff. So she's I really appreciate that. And James McCrone, another really good friend who he had the greatest idea in the world. He wrote a book before Donald Trump took office about what would happen if there was like a fraud in the electoral college and there was a whole political thing. And it was almost like predicting everything that happened. When I read it, I was like, and he was like, no, I actually wrote this beforehand. And it's really great. And he's got a couple books out, like Faithless Elector and a few others. And they are incredibly timely.
So I love this comment. He says your books have great twists and a lot of threads that come together amazingly in the end. How much do you know before you sit down to write? And I think what he's asking here is plotter or pantser?
Yeah, so that's the thing that I always ask writers. Oh, I'm definitely a pantser. I don't have I have no idea sometimes. So I basically am one of these people who go into total panic mode in the middle of the book. So I generally can start the book. I have an idea for a book and I'll start it. And when I start the book, I generally have a sort of a thought of how it would end, but that can change as the book, because a lot of times you'll just do it and the greatest thing is when you're writing is characters will take over. But I get to the middle of the book and I'm like, and I thought, I was on a panel at BoucherCon, the big mystery conference with Hank Felipe Ryan. She's won all sorts of awards. She's a TV journalist in Bob, but she's won huge awards, best-selling books. And the question came up, and I think I told her that. And she said, oh, like when I'm in the middle of a book, I just, like I said to my husband, I'm not going to be able to do this. I can't, you get that feeling like you don't know where it's going. The answer to it, and this is the key to everything, you just keep writing, and you don't worry about what's going to happen 10 chapters down the line. You write that chapter, then you write the next chapter. And then it flows. And then I find that when I get to the end of the book, that's actually the easiest because suddenly like you're in the last 5 or 6 chapters.
Yeah.
And then you got like, it just starts rolling then, but it's not a scientific process. It's not a neat process. The key, I think, is just you write every day. And now, there are other authors, great authors. Jeffrey Deaver, who's a big best-selling author. I interviewed him. He writes like a 200-page outline before he writes the book. So when he writes the book, I mean, he's basically got the book already written. He just outlines the whole book. And there are other people who do that too, do extensive outlines. I've never done an outline in my entire life. So
I outline, but I outline on cards. But I think if you're writing like 200 words, that's like a zero draft, right? You're almost writing the book.
Yeah.
So Daniel had a great question. What are your favorite noir and mystery movies?
Wow. Yeah, that's I'm just trying to there's the big ones, the Maltese Falcon, obviously. I have a big poster in my living room from the Maltese Falcon. But The Big Sleep, I mean, that's Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler, and you don't get but there's a lot of other ones. I was talking the other day about, and it's like not one we were talking the question came up about Jane Fonda for some reason. We were talking about Jane Fonda in an interview, and I remembered a movie called Clute with Jane Fonda and Donald Sutherland. And if you've never seen it, go back and watch it. It's a great little, it's a great little movie. Gene Hackman has done some movies where he's like a PI, and I. Yeah, I guess the best ones. Oh, Chinatown obviously is, Chinatown. You can't really. What are you going to say about Chinatown? And Chinatown. I tried to do a lot of script writing over the years, and I've done some scripts. And Chinatown is the one that every screenwriting class you're supposed to read that to learn how to write a script. But I'll tell you what I like most in mysteries is TV shows. So I have like my favorite TV shows, and I like, and two of my favorites, and I really believe that a lot of these characters are in my characters too. I draw on this, and one is the Rockford Files with Jim Rockford. I can just watch them endlessly because he is the ultimate flawed character, Jim Rockford.
What are you watching? Do you have anything you like from like this decade?
Don't need it. And the other is Columbo. Which is another great character. And yes, I do. I watch all this stuff on Netflix. I watched, was totally hooked on Ozark, and all that stuff,
yeah.
And I actually watch a lot of I've been watching a lot of the doc, some of the foreign stuff with even subtitle. They have a lot of good detective things on Netflix when you start doing them, and you'll have. So I do that, But now some of the great TV characters that I grew up on are the people I think that I still draw on when I'm doing these kind of characters. I love people who are like funny, but also sort of self-deprecating, and they don't take themselves seriously. And like Rockford and Columbo were both like that, and yet they had this integrity about them. And that's the kind of character that, I'm always trying to, with all my characters, there's some variation of that.
Of that integrity. So, is there anything that you want to talk about with regard to this book or this series that we have not touched on today? Because we had so many great questions.
Yeah. And I keep seeing people I should give God, and Linda Rollins, I know you mentioned her earlier. She's a great friend, and we, Linda, I still remember we're meeting you and your husband at Malice when we could all do this. We wound up walking into 7-Eleven, and there's Linda, and we're hey, look at us, we're having fun at conferences, and I miss all that, and hopefully Linda's or was anyway the head of Sisters in Crime in New Jersey, and invited me to speak at a couple of their events. So I really, really miss, as we all do, the in-person stuff, because, and there's so many people on this list now that who I know who feel the same. You meet all these authors at these things, and yes, you talk about books, but you also become friends. We have this great community of people, authors, and fortunately, they're all people who actually like their work too, and they're all different. But we go to the conferences, and we don't just talk about books. We have fun, and it's kind of like going into an office almost in the days when I was in the newsroom and hanging out with people that did what you'd like. And we haven't been able to do that. We can do it on Zoom, but we're really all hoping. I know there's 2 conferences coming up, and we're all hoping we can get to them. One is Killer Nashville, and then the other is BoucherCon in New Orleans. And it's just such an important part of this business to have feedback from readers, to have people stand in line to get your book, and then you sign the book and they start talking to you about your book. That's just that really makes it all worthwhile.
It's like crack.
Yeah. And I'm, again, I'm in a place where I did that for a number of years, but I'm basically in the basement alone here right now. I'm talking to all you guys,
what
but
do you mean alone?
Oh, Mike's here. Okay, Mike.
Right, we're here with you. We're all here with you.
I think I just offended Mike from Mysterious. He's walking out on me now. There you go.
James is here.
I can't work under these conditions.
Yeah, so I want to ask you before we wrap things up. First of all, we're about to wrap things up. So if you have one last question, you want to get it in now. But I want to know, what is the thing that you miss most about about being in the newsroom every day?
The energy in the newsroom. I've talked. A lot of people have asked this question, and they say, like, a big story breaks, and whatever it be. And most big stories are tragic, some kind of a shooting or a plane crash or something, or a big political story. And they'll say, don't you miss being able to cover that? And the answer is, I don't really that much. I covered so many big stories over the years that I don't have this need. And sometimes it's nice to be able to watch something without having to do that. What I do miss is there's a unique energy in the newsroom, and a lot of people on this list know this. And in the right kind of newsroom, maybe it's more in New York newsrooms than it is in other parts of the city. But like certainly all four places where I worked: the New York Post, the New York Daily News, Star Magazine, and NBC. I worked two places at NBC. I worked NBC local stations, and then I worked at the NBC News. And all of them, there is this. There's all these talented people and energy and humor and intensity and sometimes anger. I mean, and it's this. I mean, the classic thing in a newsroom is you could have a screaming match with somebody, and then 5 minutes later you're going out and having a drink with them, and everybody. I miss that. I miss that energy. We used to have. One of the things I write about it a lot in the books is the news meeting. So Claire always talks about the news meeting being her favorite part of the job. Well, that's because the news meeting was my favorite part of the job. And I love doing the news meetings. And people here like Greg Gage and stuff know that. And, a lot of the times the news meetings they wouldn't even be about the news. We used to have a call would come in from California, and we had it. And so they would come in sort of like a Zoom thing like this. And a bunch of us would be in New York. And I remember I was doing a news meeting at NBC News one day, and somebody told me afterwards, and everybody was laughing, and the guy from California was telling some kind of joke, and it was funny. I said, quiet, he's got jokes, listen to this guy, and there was just this, there's always this energy in all the newsrooms that I work, not just from me, but from a lot of people. And so that's what I miss. But like I said, within the author community, you get a lot of that too. You get a lot of that same thing. That's why the conferences are good. I mean, I go to, in normal times, probably about a half dozen of these a year. And you really look forward to them, and not just doing the panels or stuff, but just hanging out with other people and talking.
Well, and you can sort of relive that energy right when you're writing the book, because Claire is having those experiences that you love and miss, and out of the newsroom, in the newsroom, she's having those same experiences that you did.
Let me just mention. So Rich Sorodnik said no big sleep, but I did mention the big sleep. I said I thought I did. I did the big sleep as one of them, and the Maltese Falcon, and Farewell, My Lovely, and somebody just, who I don't know who it is, somebody just said Robert Mitchum, and I actually thought Robert Mitchum was really incredible as Philip Marlowe. I mean, he was Humphrey Bogart, but he was really great. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I'm a big Robert Mitchum fan. Whoever wrote that, I'm a big Robert Mitchum fan. So,
Yeah. So I know that that the film agencies are thinking that this is that Claire Carlson is going to be. Oh yeah, that's a good one. That Claire Carlson is going to be a character that a lot of actresses are going to want to play. And I'm wondering, do you have anybody in mind? Like dream cast, who would play Claire Carlson?
No, I think basically whoever wants the job can have it. I've been down this path, Lisa. The very first book I ever wrote, like long time ago, I wrote a book. The very first book I ever had published in 1985, and it came out, and it had a woman character who worked at a newspaper, and they called me up and they said, "Oh, guess what? Both Sally Field and Jane Fonda have asked for copies of the book. They want to see it for possible things." And now at the time, Jane Fonda and Sally Field were probably the two biggest actresses in Hollywood, and I just thought, wow, I'm in, this is it, wow. And of course, nothing ever happens. I've had one of my books optioned by Hollywood. And what often happens is, well, what happened in this case is they optioned it for, not an unsubstantial amount of money. And put the script in a pile somewhere and never looked at it. I mean, there was never anything after that. You don't get anything. It's just there's an awful lot of that. And then, of course, the other thing with Hollywood, and I know a bit about this because, I've covered a lot and I know some people in Hollywood. If you do get a book or script published, it will come out looking nothing like you probably wrote. So,
right.
So that's the really good thing about a book, that you can make it your own. Now, having said that, if somebody were to do a TV show or something on Claire Carlson, well, then the books would sell like crazy, obviously, because a lot more people would see them. So that's the hope that you do.
Ooh, okay. Joanna's got a good suggestion here. Ready?
Nicole Kidman, yeah, I would like that. She's, and that's a good age because Claire is like in her late 40s in the book, so that would work, yeah. So if anybody has Nicole's number, just let me have it, and I'll reach out.
Give her a call.
Yeah. She might still be mad at me though. A lot of celebrities are mad at me when they find out I worked for Star Magazine because they didn't, so. But
right, I guess it depends on your coverage.
I'll say whatever happened was Phil Bunton's fault at Star Magazine.
Oh my goodness gracious. Well, thank you so much. You have been super awesome. And oh my gosh, everybody in the chat, thank you for making this so much fun. It's really been fantastic. If you guys want to get a copy of the book signed by Dick, look, here he is in action right here at the Mysterious Bookshop, which is like one of my very favorite stores ever. Certainly my favorite mystery shop in New York, but like one of my all-time favorites. It's such an incredible store. If you've not been there, you need to go. There is a link down below in the description. I love that. There's a link down below in the description. You can order right from the Mysterious Bookshop and get one of those signed copies from Dick. And I just want to say thank you so much to Mike, who was our sort of producer tonight. He was popping all those comments up for us.
That made it so good. That made it so great. We had asked him to do this, and it just because one of the things that we discovered last year is that rather than having me and Lisa just talk, having everybody jump in and comment and letting us comment on them it makes it feel more like a party. It's not a party because we're not all together, but it makes it feel a little bit more like a party. Except there's no drinks, unfortunately.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to say it's not a party because we're not all drinking, but what? Some of us are.
All the drinks are on me. I'll buy the drinks. Well, one of the things we always did and you're down in Florida, so you never saw this, Lisa, but after this event, when I had a couple of the book events here, we would always go to one of the bars down here in downtown Manhattan, and a bunch of us, we had some pretty good groups of people, and believe it or not, it was quite fun, and that's another thing that hopefully next year. And as you know, there's another Claire Carlson coming out in 2022. I have to finish writing that one, but you probably have to finish writing the book before you can have the book party. I think that's the way it works.
I think that generally is.
But it would be nice. It would hopefully we could do a live one, because those were really fun, because we would have the group thing here, and then we would all go drink afterwards, and that's can't beat that.
That is a book party for you, and I always feel like that it just makes it a lot more fun. I did want to say something earlier, because you were talking about. Would you mind popping that picture down, please, Mike? So thank you. So earlier you were talking about how you did not have beta readers, but then you were talking about how Greg Gitrich reads all your books. He gives you feedback. Yeah. That's a beta reader.
I think that it's just, I go to a lot of conferences, and basically people write a book, and then they have a group of like 12 people. And I just think that what I do is a bit different, and again, I should say that the people that read my books, which are, is people like people that are very close to me, and like my agent, an editor, and when Greg reads the book, I mean, there are people who I know who they are, I know what their background is, and like I say, I'm going to do everything, but but
You value their
you respect, you value their opinion, and so to me that's a little bit different than. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, I don't listen to anybody, because that sounds incredibly, egotistical. I do, and like I said, if a lot of people all said the same thing to me when they read a book, I probably would think about it. But I just find that you can have 12 people in a room, they can have 12 different opinions, and I've had, you can get reviews of things. It's just crazy. I mean, I had, like most of my reviews have been incredibly kind, people, and they always say. Belsky knows how a newsroom runs and all that. But I had one review one time. It was like, well, this is totally unrealistic of how a newsroom runs. And I'm like, wait a minute, you can say what you want, but don't tell me I don't know how a newsroom runs. Now, having said that, though, of course, this isn't exactly the way a newsroom runs, because a newsroom doesn't run with, Claire running out and solving murders every day and all that kind of stuff. A lot of what goes on in a newsroom is much more boring, but it's fiction, and so you're taking liberties. But no, you can get, and this from reviews, Lisa. You can read one review and it'll be, oh, I like the story but don't like the character. Oh, I like the character. It's so different. So I'm only happy when I can write I'm happy when I can write a book that I feel confident about and strong about. So
you should
you
should definitely feel that way about Beyond the Headlines. It is an absolutely fantastic book. I want to take 2 more comments before we say goodbye. Rich says, great series. May the success go ever onwards. A little editing for you there. And Joanna Elm says, I say book party first. I
need to. So I'm looking at some of these too, and I'm sorry if I missed anybody, because they're coming down the side. But if you can call up William Thomas, lots of fun, Dick. Good luck. So I should say something about Bill. Bill is my oldest friend in the world. Bill and I met on our first day of college at freshman orientation day at Ohio University, and we wound up being best friends through college. We actually went and started our first job together at the same newspaper, which we managed to get ourselves fired from, but that's another whole thing, because we were in the right. And then Bill and I both went in the Army on almost the same day, the same week, and after that. So we have a lot of history, and we have unfortunately we don't see each other that much, but he's in Michigan, and we just had a Zoom call over the weekend, and it's really great to have somebody that you've been really, really close friends with for that long, and he's been incredibly supportive of the books. So that's it, Bill. I've given you your, but I just wanted to call you out, because I don't have that many friends I've known for 50 years. Actually 50 plus at this point. Yeah, 50
that's a long time. Well, thank you so much to everybody. Thank you, Dick. Thank you very, very much to the Mysterious Bookshop for hosting this awesome event. Make sure you guys support them. They are an indie bookstore.
Please try and buy your books from them if you can. You can order them, with them online, or they'll send them to you wherever you are. Please do, because they've been so great to me. So we really want to support your independent bookstores, especially this independent bookstore, since they hosted my party.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. You guys are awesome.
It's our pleasure. Thank you to Lisa and to Dick. And go to mysteriousbookshop.com for all the info. Give us a call, 212-587-1011. And we'll take care of you for a copy of Beyond the Headlines or whatever else you might like. 212-587-1011. Good night, all.
Are we still in the air?
Yes, we are.
Still on the air.
So I can't say anything bad to anybody yet.
And we're off
everybody.
in 5, 4,
Can I insult somebody? I want to insult some of these people, so let's get off the air now.